Hello and welcome to this presentation of the Paterno Monograms, Art of Personalizing Apartment Buildings. The people in black and white are the Paterno family. Third from the left is Charles Paterno, my great-grandfather. He had one child, a son, my grandfather Carlo. Carlo had 3 daughters, of which one is my mother. The Paterno family, of which I'll be speaking, consists of 2 parents and their 10 children, 5 sons and 5 daughters. The family originated in the town of Castelmezzano in the province of Potenza in the region of Basilicata in southern Italy, right where the red pin is on the map. Father Giovanni emigrated to New York City in 1880 and changed his name to John. Mama Carolina followed with their 4 eldest children, Celestina, Severio, Charles, and Joseph, in 1885. The 6 younger children were born in Manhattan. All adult children lived and married in New York City except Severio, who returned to Italy. The 5 sisters brought 5 brothers-in-law into the family and all became builders with the Paterno brothers. Together they built many buildings. Here is a numerical overview of the Paterno family buildings that span from 35th Street up to 188th Street between Riverside Drive and East End Avenue. There were a total of 164 buildings, of which to date only 14 have been demolished. Out of those, 155 were apartment houses, 4 were family homes, 1 was a castle, 1 was a garage that's now a condo, 1 a theater, 1 cultural center, and 1 tiny steel house. You may have heard the name Paterno before in association with New York architecture. A building named the Paterno was built in 1909 at the corner of Riverside Drive and 116th Street, which still stands. The Paterno Castle stood overlooking the Hudson River on an estate between 182nd Street and 186th Streets between 1907 and 1938. The Paterno building and the Paterno Castle came from the same Paterno family that we will be discussing in this presentation. Over the years, I heard tidbits about my great-grandfather, Dr. Charles V. Paterno, and about a supposed handful of buildings around Manhattan, but it wasn't until the pandemic shut down in 2020 did I devote any significant time to digging into my family history. As I was researching my genealogy, I read a statement that claimed that it was, quote, estimated that the Paterno family built over 100 buildings in Manhattan, unquote. That sounded just like the temptation my sort of curiosity feasted on, and I set out to find these 100 buildings. To date, I have positively identified 164 Manhattan buildings constructed by the Paterno family. To my knowledge, my research is the first time in history that all of the Paterno buildings in Manhattan have ever been counted and cataloged in one place. The Paterno Manhattan story is one that was largely lost to time. It has been rewarding to discover and reassemble the legacy, 90% of which we, the family descendants, never knew until now. To organize and share a story of immigrant determination and success, as well as architectural legacy with my core family and my newfound family of distant cousins, has been deeply satisfying. To share it with the interested public is the stuff dreams are made of. Thank you for being here. To build all of those buildings, the Paterno family worked with a large number of different architects. We're going to focus on 3 during this presentation: Rosario Candela, George F. Pelham, and Gaetan Aiello. Gaetan Aiello emigrated from Sicily and arrived in America in 1902 at 19 years old. Trained in Italy, he soon set himself up as an architect with his first recorded project dating in 1906. Next, he designed a few buildings for Bernard Crystal on the Upper West Side, putting him in the neighborhood of the Paterno family, who had built over 40 buildings in the area by the time of their meeting. Aiello's first project with the Paterno family took place in 1910, and he continued designing for them through 1923. Aiello was fond of engraving his name on a cornerstone of his buildings, as you can see here in the photo on the right, and monogramming a cartouche with one initial or two initials of the builder. Perhaps he felt that if he were going to put his name on the cornerstone of all his buildings, that the builder should leave his mark too. While he designed 22 buildings for the Paterno family, he didn't monogram them all, unfortunately. He didn't design the most buildings for the Paterno family, but he did design the most monogrammed buildings for the Paterno family, as you will see. Rosario was another Sicilian American architect who emigrated to New York City around 1909 when he was 19 years old. He graduated from the Columbia University School of Architecture in 1915. After graduation, he apprenticed for Gaetan Aiello and went into private practice in 1920. His first project was for Paterno brother-in-law Anthony Campagna in 1922 at 215 West 92nd Street, which we will see in a bit. Rosario Candela, over time, earned the reputation of a premier designer of luxury apartment houses for some of the most desirable addresses in the city. He designed 40 buildings for the Paterno family from 1922 to 1948 and was the architect who designed the most buildings for the family. George Frederick Pelham was born in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, to an architect father who moved the family and worked for New York City's Department of Public Parks. George was privately tutored and opened his own architectural firm in 1890, specializing in apartment houses, hotels, row houses, and commercial buildings. He designed buildings for over 4 decades, predominantly on the Upper West Side, and designed 29 buildings for the Paterno family between 1902 and 1928. He was a bit older than Aiello and Candela, and it took Pelham late into his career with the Paterno family to monogram any of his buildings. I'm going to fully credit Gaetan Aiello with the unique design element of personalizing a building with a monogram. It is my speculation that it is something he saw in Sicily and brought to America, or something he developed in his creative imagination. Aiello built 3 buildings before he worked with the Paterno family. The first was an unmonogrammed tenement house at 115th Street and First Avenue. The second was a beautiful ornate building called the Miramar at 452 Riverside Drive, north of 116th Street, that he designed for Bernard and Hyman Crystal. It is very decorated, but does not have a monogram. It seems that Aiello's first monogram was on his 3rd building, the Peter Minuet at 25 Claremont Avenue, also designed for Bernard and Hyman Crystal. It is monogrammed with a letter C above the entrance door. Although Aiello's tendency to place monogrammed cartouches on his buildings didn't begin with the Paterno family, we'll see that he pretty much perfected it with them. I fully credit Aiello as the originator of this architectural flourish, which was later picked up by his apprentice Candela and then their contemporary architect, George F. Pelham. What is a cartouche? A cartouche is an ornamentation in scroll form applied especially to elaborate frames around tablets or coats of arms. By extension, the word is applied to any oval shape or even to a decorative shield, whether scroll-like in appearance or not. Here are some examples of architectural cartouches from Google. So very often they are blank in the center. Sometimes they appear with a coat of arms or other symbols like fleur-de-lis, and sometimes they feature a date or building number. More rarely do they appear with monograms or initials. Nearly all the cartouches that we will be seeing today are made from ornamental terracotta. It is recorded that the Paterno family worked often with the New Jersey Terracotta Company, which existed from 1888 to 1928. In the late 1800s, there were more than 100 terracotta manufacturers in the United States, but now fewer than a dozen remain due to aesthetic changes and increased production costs. The New Jersey Terracotta Company plant was located in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, while the administrative and sales office was located in the now demolished Singer Building at 149 Broadway in Manhattan, which is being pointed to in the image. Terracotta, the term, literally means cooked earth and dates from the Italian Renaissance when terracotta was first largely used for architectural purposes. Terracotta, the material, though, is undoubtedly the oldest building material known in history other than wood. The earliest reference to the use of burnt or baked clay as a building material is found in the 11th chapter of Genesis in the Bible in connection with the building of the Tower of Babel. Quote, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly," unquote. Weighing roughly 1/10 as much as stone, architectural terracotta can be readily shaped into hollow sculptural forms at a much lower cost than quarried stone. A simplified overview of the architectural glazed terracotta manufacturing process starts with raw clay being shipped to the plant from different parts of the country, prepared as a custom mix for each specific project, put through rollers, and then through a clay crusher. The clay then passes into a pug mill in which it is mixed into a plastic pliable state. It emerges in solid bars of clay ready for use in the pressing shop. In the plant is a drafting room where designs are made according to architectural specifications, taking into account the shrinkage of the dried and cooked clay, and a modeling department where those designs are crafted by hand. Once the model is approved, plaster of Paris molds are made and the prepared clay is pressed into the molds. Molds are then removed. Any detailed carving is done by hand. The clay is allowed to dry, glaze applied to add color, texture, and protection, and then the hardened products are taken to the kiln. After the pieces are burned at a minimum of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit over 7 days of heating and cooling to strengthen the material, they are removed to the fitting department. In the fitting department, the pieces undergo severe scrutiny and checking. Trimming may be resorted to when necessary until the different parts join snugly together according to the most minute requirements of the plans submitted by the architect. The terracotta pieces are then carefully transported to the building site where they are systematically installed. These are some terracotta pieces manufactured by the New Jersey Terracotta Company. Note how larger pieces are crafted in sections, which are then fitted together. Sometimes the seams are noticeable, and other times they are hidden in the design. It was a general rule in the business that no one piece should be larger than 2 men could carry. All right, with that understanding, let's get busy looking at some Paterno buildings. The Paterno at 440 Riverside Drive was built by the Paterno brothers Charles and Joseph and designed by Schwartz and Gross in 1909. While this isn't officially one of the monogrammed buildings, this is the very first example of a personalized Paterno building. Charles, on the left, my great-grandfather, and his younger brother Joseph built 38 buildings together over 12 years in the early point of their joint career. As so many families do, in 1910 they had a falling out. Joseph retained the Paterno brothers' business name for himself, and Charles continued as the Paterno Construction Company. They were still Paternos and both still brothers, but together they were no longer the Paterno brothers, as is inscribed on the base of the Paterno apartment house. At this time, this is the only known cornerstone inscribed with the Paterno name. Prior to splitting up, the Paterno brothers had worked mostly with the firm Schwartz & Gross. Right after the split, Joseph crossed paths with the new architect Gaetan Aiello, who designed a set of 3 buildings. The first of the triplet buildings was the Luxor at 2931 Broadway at the corner of 115th Street. This was Joseph's first building with Aiello and was Aiello's first building project with any of the Paternos. This is the oldest monogram Paterno building dating to 1910. Joseph placed 5 PB for Paterno Brothers monograms on the Luxor, 2 terracotta cartouches on each street side of the corner building, and 1 on the metal marquee, all circled in red. This is the only Paterno building that features a monogrammed marquee. In subsequent buildings, Joseph would use the letters P or JP, but never again PB. This is the only Paterno building monogrammed with PB. Joseph built under the business name Paterno Brothers his entire life, but in my opinion, moving forward from this project, he didn't want anyone to think that his brother Charles had anything to do with his buildings. Sibling rivalry is as old as cooked earth. In 1911, Joseph built the second of the triplet buildings, the Rexor, at 600 West 116th Street at the corner of Broadway, and placed a round monogrammed JP cartouche over the entrance and 2 crest-shaped JP cartouches under the 7th floor center windows on each side of the corner building. Additionally, he placed 6 large JP monogrammed cartouches at the cornice level of the Rexor for a total of 9 cartouches. The Regnor at 601 West 115th Street at the corner of Broadway was the third of the bunch and received 2 regal matching JP monogram cartouches at the top of the pilasters flanking the entrance court. We'll talk about the Regnor again toward the end of this presentation. This building may have had more decorative terracotta, but it's been nearly stripped for good reason, which we will discuss. In true competitive brotherly style, in 1911, Charles built his own set of 3 buildings right after the breakup. 2 were designed by Schwartz & Gross and were not monogrammed. But for the Prince Monaco at 229 West 109th Street, between Broadway and Amsterdam Avenue, Charles hired the new architect Gaetan Aiello and put 6 letter P cartouches under 6 windows on the face of the building. While there was certainly some competition, at least at the beginning of the split, Charles and Joseph working independently, I think, proved to be to their benefit and to the benefit of Manhattan. Rather than work on the same projects, they worked on different projects simultaneously, and both explored and developed their unique styles and concepts. Staying together may have limited their output and may have squelched their divergent creativity. This beautiful building is the Lucania at 235 West 71st Street between West End Avenue and Broadway. It was designed by Aiello and built by Anthony Campagna, husband of Marie Paterno, in 1912. The Lucania has one monogrammed cartouche over the main entrance on this apartment house, which is the letter L for Lucania. Perhaps Anthony wasn't feeling bold enough yet to post his own initials on his first building, but that feeling wouldn't last long. Feast your eyes on this gem. Dr. Charles V. Paterno placed 3 ornate letter P cartouches on each exposed corner of his building at 200 West 58th Street, which was built in 1912 at the corner of 7th Avenue and designed by Aiello. In 2015, a photographer took a photo of the round letter P monogrammed cartouche over the original entrance door. Sometime after 2015, the building was remodeled and the new modern metal entrance door surround was installed, covering up the cartouche. I trust that it is still under there. Now we're having fun. Michael Paterno built the Mentone at 895 West End Avenue at the corner of 104th Street in 1912. Designed by Gaetan Aiello, there are 6 letter P monogram cartouches on the front of the building and 6 letter P monogram cartouches on the 104th Street side of the building for a total of 12 identical letter P cartouches. This is a record. Here is the Luxonia at 305 West 72nd Street between Riverside Drive and West End Avenue, designed by Aiello and built by Anthony Campagna, husband of Marie Paterno, in 1912. These monogrammed cartouches are unique in that this is the only Paterno family building that features multiple cartouches with different initials. The L over the main entrance door is for Luxonia, and the AC under the 6-story window is for Anthony Campagna. Unlike the Lucania, where Anthony only placed a letter L monogram, here he included the building name as well as his name. In 1907, Dr. Charles V. Paterno built a residential castle for himself, his wife, and son on the banks of the Hudson River in Washington Heights. There is a full video on this same YouTube channel all about the history of the Paterno Castle. In 1913, Dr. Paterno added the stone pillars and iron gate around his estate. In 1938, Dr. Paterno demolished his castle and built the 5 Castle Village apartment towers. A section of the original iron fence remains, and we can see 2 iron letter P's on the sides of the gate. Here is a simple, round, medallion-style monogram cartouche with Joseph Paterno's initials JP. I think this might be the only set of initials in a cartouche with periods after each letter. Aiello designed 885 West End Avenue at the corner of 103rd Street in 1915. For a long time, I didn't think that the 1915 Rutherford at 360 Riverside Drive at the corner of 108th Street had a monogram cartouche. Above the door and above the building's name in the transom, there is a blank cartouche. But as I studied the building closer on Google Maps, on my computer, here in South Carolina where I live, I discovered what certainly looks like the letter P high up under a 12th story center window. In March 2023, I visited Manhattan and took my binoculars to 360 Riverside Drive, and sure enough, I was able to confirm a small but definite letter P cartouche under the 12th story center window facing the river. I used the zoom feature on my phone camera to capture it, and then zoomed in on the image to show you here. It's not a great photo, but it is documentation of an existing monogram cartouche. Why it is so little and why it is so far up the building, I do not know. Here is a beautifully designed entrance by Aiello for Joseph Paterno at 905 West End Avenue at the corner of 104th Street in 1916. This monogram looks like it could be just a fancy letter P, but I think the two initials JP are actually overlaid. Here again are Joseph's initials JP in the cartouche above the main doorway on the apartment house at 884 West End Avenue at the corner of 103rd Street, designed by Gaetan Aiello in 1919. Aiello designed for Anthony Paterno this apartment house at 221 West 71st Street between West End and Amsterdam Avenues in 1919. A classic AP monogram cartouche is featured over the door. Here is a 1920 apartment house at 325 Riverside Drive at the corner of 105th Street, designed by Aiello for Joseph with a JP cartouche. It's possible that this was a reused cartouche mold, as it looks identical to the cartouche we just saw 2 slides ago on 884 West End Avenue. A cost-effective feature of terracotta molds is that they can be reused. 220 West 71st Street between West End Avenue and Broadway was designed by Aiello and built by Joseph Paterno in 1920. Here is a classic and straightforward monogrammed cartouche with the letter P for Paterno. Well, what do we have here? It's not a set of initials, but a face over the main door. But whose face is on 505 West End Avenue at the corner of 84th Street? I'm pretty sure it is not the face of the builder, Anthony Paterno. The apartment house was designed in 1920 by Gaetan Aiello, and the face looks suspiciously similar to him, in my opinion. I'm curious what you think. The Clayton, built in 1922 by Anthony Campagna, was the very first building designed by Rosario Candela for the Paterno family and was Candela's very first project in Manhattan. Remember, Candela trained under Gaetan Aiello, and when Aiello left Manhattan for other pursuits, it was natural that the Paterno family took up projects with Candela, who would become a prolific and favorite architect for the Paternos and a much celebrated architect in Manhattan. The Clayton at 215 West 92nd Street at the corner of Broadway features a classic shield-shaped Candela-designed cartouche with the letter C, again for Campagna, but doubles nicely for Candela as well as the Clayton. This is the most unusual building designed by Rosario Candela for the Paterno family. The builder was Michael Campagna, Anthony's younger brother, who married Celestina Paterno's oldest daughter. Built in 1922, nowhere near anything else built by the family, on 169th Street between Broadway and Audubon Avenue, Michael assisted on another very similar building for this painting contractor to house his laborers on 139th Street with the same architect, Rosario Candela. I'm suspecting this modest building may have had similar origins. Andrea Ognabeni and his crews painted the interiors of many Paterno apartment buildings, and I'm sure he needed housing for his growing labor force. Rosario was a new and relatively unknown architect for the Paterno family in 1922, and while Michael assisted on many Paterno projects, this is the only building for which he was listed as the principal builder on the building permit. I suspect that his older brother and established builder, Anthony Campagna, slid this side project over to his younger brother to complete with the new up-and-coming architect for the benefit of the painter's work crew. I love that even this modest building received a monogrammed cartouche nonetheless. an unassuming shield with a raised C initial for Campagna and or Candela, has survived all of these years. Here is another shield cartouche with the letters JP for Joseph Paterno, who built 915 West End Avenue at the corner of 105th Street. It was designed by Candela in 1922. 878 West End Avenue at the corner of 103rd Street was built in 1922 by Ralph Chiluzzi, husband of Teresa Paterno. It works out well that this initial C can stand for Chiluzzi or Candela or both. Here is a simple but bold and large letter P monogrammed cartouche on the apartment house at 1105 Park Avenue at the corner of 89th Street, designed in 1922 by Candela for Michael Paterno. Here's a tricky one. In 1922, Aiello designed this apartment house at 310 West 85th Street between Riverside Drive and West End Avenue. Unfortunately, the awning over the entrance covers the monogram cartouche. We can see a bit of the bottom and a bit of the top of the cartouche, and it looks like the letter C on top of the letter P. Charles Paterno never monogrammed his buildings with CP, and he definitely did not build this building. Digging deeper into the building permit, it is revealed that both Anthony Paterno and his brother-in-law, Victor Sarabone, built this building as equal partners, hence the P for Paterno and C for Sarabone. This is the only Paterno building that features an initial for each of two builders and is the only Anthony Paterno building not monogrammed with AP, or Ralph Chiluzzi building not monogrammed with just a C or RC. Here is a Candela designed cartouche in a simple shield shape with the letter C. This 1923 building at 300 West 108th Street at the corner of Broadway is named the Charlton, and it was built by Victor Sarabone, the husband of Celestina Paterno. So do we think that the initial C was for Sarabone, the Charlton, or Candela, or all three? I think the builder, but again, it's nice that it can serve multiple purposes. Here is another 1923 Aiello designed building for Anthony Paterno with a round monogrammed cartouche with the letters AP and a period, located at 514 West End Avenue at the corner of 85th Street. In 1923, Rosario designed for Ralph Chiluzzi, the husband of Teresa Paterno, this apartment house at 875 West End Avenue at the corner of 103rd Street. This shield-shaped cartouche with the crossed swords is unique for Candela. It is monogrammed with the initials RC for Ralph Chiluzzi or Rosario Candela, but I'm almost certain it's for the builder, not the architect, but it's nifty that it could be both or either. 473 West End Avenue at the corner of 83rd Street is the last building Gaetan Aiello designed for the Paterno family. This apartment house was built in 1923 by Anthony Paterno, and those are his initials in one period in the round cartouche above the entrance door, just like we saw 2 slides ago on 514 West End Avenue. Again, terracotta molds make for easy duplication. Here's a Joseph Paterno and Rosario Candela project from 1924, located at 332 West 86th Street between Riverside Drive and West End Avenue. When built, the apartment house was addressed at 334 West 86th Street. The terracotta detail on this building is exceptional. The entrance door is flanked by pillars decorated with flowers, reptiles, leaves, mammals, and faces. The outer pillars are topped with gargoyle-style creatures holding shields showcasing swans with entwined necks. The shields on the inner pillars are monogrammed with the letters JP for Joseph Paterno on both sides of the entranceway. This is the only red-colored terracotta monogrammed cartouche in the Paterno catalog. Here is the apartment house at 425 Riverside Drive at the corner of 115th Street that Candela designed in 1924. The monogrammed cartouche above the entrance door shows the initials of JP for the builder Joseph Paterno. In 1924, this apartment house was designed for Anthony Paterno by George F. Pelham, which is one of only 3 by Pelham that is monogrammed. Unfortunately, it is blocked by the awning, but we can safely assume that it features the letters AP, since that is the way Anthony always monogrammed his solo buildings. 910 West End Avenue on the corner of 105th Street was designed in 1924 by George F. Pelham and built by Victor Sarabone, husband of Celestina Paterno. The letter C monogram is directly above the Tudor-style archway rather than seated in a cartouche, which makes it unique. I love this building for its secret feature. The Wellston appears from the street to be 2 completely independent buildings, but as you can see on the pink map, they are connected by an above-ground hallway, and together they are considered one building. The larger portion stands at 161 West 75th Street at the corner of Amsterdam Avenue. Above the entrance is a recessed marble transom with inlaid initials of AP. To date, this is the only known marble monogram in the Paterno catalog. On the smaller portion of the building, which stands at 174 West 76th Street between Amsterdam and Columbus Avenues, there is an elaborate Candela-designed monogram cartouche with the initials of the builder Anthony Paterno. In 1924, Rosario Candela designed this apartment house at 865 West End Avenue at the corner of 102nd Street for Joseph Paterno and placed a cartouche with a monogram above the entrance door. Additionally, this is the only Paterno building with an existing monogrammed iron and glass entrance door. Like the cartouche, it is monogrammed in the center of both doors with the letters JP. Here is a beautiful 1925 cartouche over the main entrance door of 800 West End Avenue at the corner of 99th Street, designed by Rosario Candela and built by Anthony Paterno. The cartouche features Anthony's initials AP. This building at 315 West 106th Street between Riverside Drive and West End Avenue was also designed by Candela in 1925 for Joseph Paterno. Above the attractive entrance door is a cartouche monogrammed with a P or JP. This monogram is definitely a letter P at minimum, but it might have a wispy foot kicking left, which may make it a stylized hybrid blend of J and P. Here is another 1925 monogram cartouche designed by Candela for Joseph Paterno at 325 West 86th Street between Riverside Drive and West End Avenue. This looks like a duplicate J or JP monogram cartouche of the previous building. On the 1925 apartment house at 820 West End Avenue at the corner of 100th Street, there is a Candela-designed cartouche monogrammed with AP for builder Anthony Paterno. This is the newest addition to the catalog of monograms. One of the most wonderful aspects of sharing my family story publicly is the networking with people who do live or have lived in Paterno family buildings. These photos were recently sent to me. When I say my research is ongoing, I truly mean it. 230 West End Avenue at the corner of 70th Street was designed by Candela in 1927 and built by Ralph Cialuzzi. Because it's common that most Manhattan apartment houses are known by their architect rather than their builder, the individual who lived here and photographed it for me thought that the letters RC stood for Rosario Candela, when in fact they stand for Ralph Cialuzzi, but of course could be both. There is one RC monogram cartouche over the main entrance and 4 RC monogrammed balconettes on the 7th floor. This is the only Paterno family building with monogrammed balconettes. To my knowledge, at this time, 230 West End Avenue is the last monogrammed building Candela designed for the Paterno family, though he would go on to design 14 more buildings for them. And here we have arrived at the last monogram in the catalog. In 1928, George F. Pelham designed 220 Cabrini Boulevard at the corner of 186th Street for Ralph Cialuzzi, husband of Teresa Paterno. The entrance is covered with scaffolding. However, neighbors have attested to the presence of a monogram. In March of 2023, when I visited, I was able to confirm its presence. However, it's nearly impossible to photograph it with the scaffolding in the way. The image on the lower right of the screen is at the entrance door looking straight up. Above it is an image zoomed in where the letters RC can slightly be seen. This is the last building, monogrammed or not, that George F. Pelham designed for the Paterno family. During my research, I came across several blank unmonogrammed cartouches. Here are 2 examples. At one point, I had hoped that perhaps the monogram was sanded down by a subsequent owner of the building, but I've since learned that nothing can be done with the face of the material after it is cooked in the kiln. It will not work down like stone, and only the joints can be chiseled or trimmed to ensure a close fit. Sanding the terracotta would damage the glaze. If monograms were sanded down, it's my guess that there would be a hint or shadow of the original letters, or the entire face of the cartouche would be noticeably different in color and or texture than the rest of the cartouche. Also, tampering with the protective glaze would open up the terracotta to deterioration. So I've resigned myself to accepting that some cartouches were never monogrammed. I don't know why, and I wish they were, but that is simply not the case. Here is a sampling of Gaetan Aiello's monogrammed cartouches for the Paterno family. Of the 22 buildings that Aiello designed for the family between 1910 and 1923, 18 of them feature monogrammed cartouches. And here is a sampling of Rosario Candela's monogrammed cartouches for the Paterno family. Of the 40 buildings that Candela designed for the family between 1922 and 1948, 16 of them feature monogrammed cartouches. And finally, here are the 3 George F. Pelham monogrammed buildings for the Paterno family. Of the 29 buildings that he designed for the family between 1902 and 1928, only 3 of them featured monograms. It is safe to say that Pelham was influenced in a belated and minimal way by Candela, who was influenced by Aiello in this regard. Unfortunately, 2 of these are not great photos. I don't think anything will ever be done to remove awning structures from the cartouches so that they can be seen. However, I do have faith that one day temporary scaffolding will be removed so that architectural details can be seen. Now, what is the reason for all this scaffolding, such as wrapping the building on the right? On the night of May 16, 1979, a terracotta chunk from the 8th floor window lintel of the Regnour apartment house, built in Morningside Heights at the corner of Broadway and 115th Street by Joseph Paterno, but long after he sold it, a 25-pound terracotta lintel chunk came loose and fell to the sidewalk, killing Bernard College freshman Grace Gold. After her tragic death, Local Law 10 mandated an inspection every 4 years of the facade of every residential building over 6 stories. The updated law is now called Local Law 11, which is tasked with keeping buildings safe by requiring owners of properties higher than 6 stories to have the exterior walls and architectural detailing inspected every 5 years, hence the scaffolding for the inspection, and then any subsequent scaffolding for repairs. Sometimes buildings are wrapped in scaffolding like this for years at a time. Scaffolding is a very controversial topic in Manhattan. Love it or hate it, for now it is what keeps terracotta details from being stripped from older buildings. For that I am glad, as I'm very fond of my family's monogram cartouches, and I hope more people will notice, understand, appreciate, and preserve them. The Regnour, the building that tragically killed Grace in 1979, is devoid of nearly all terracotta detailing now. The image on the left is from circa 1940, and the image on the right was captured in 2021. You can see that all of the original terracotta balconies, window lintels, wraparound belt courses, and top cornice have been removed, and still there is scaffolding present to inspect what little terracotta detailing remains at the base of the building. Sometimes these architectural details are less expensive to remove than to repair or maintain. Many Paterno buildings and other historic buildings have had their gorgeous cornices completely removed for this very reason. On the flip side, it's amazing and delightful to me that so many of my family's terracotta monogram cartouches have survived. So when you're walking around Manhattan, particularly the Upper West and East Sides, and notice letters of the alphabet adorning apartment houses, chances are very high you're observing a Paterno building. Aiello, Candela, and Pelham didn't design only for the Paterno family, and the Paternos are not the only builders who monogrammed their buildings. However, it is unique and exceptional that the Paterno family personalized so many of their buildings. There are 40 Paterno buildings with some sort of personalization, such as a cartouche, cornerstone, fence, marquee, door, balconette, or a face. There are 69 individual monogrammed terracotta cartouches across these 40 buildings. Thank you for watching. I have enjoyed sharing this information with you. My website is paternoarchitecture.com, which contains all of my research about the Paterno family and their architecture. Please feel welcome to contact me directly through my website at any time with questions or information you may have.